And good afternoon. You're listening to Ken Hudnall. This is the Ken Hudnall Show. Coming to you from our studios right here in exciting El Paso, Texas. Gateway to the Old West and the most haunted city in the country. Well, today is the June the 26th, 177th day of this year. Just 188 days remain to the year's over with, and we'll start a brand new one. Well, it's International Day Against Drug Abuse and Illicit Trafficking, established by the UN. It's also International Day in support of victims of torture. UN recognized day to speak out against the crime of torture and honor and support the victims and survivors worldwide. Well, no matter what store you go into, unless it's a very tiny mom and pop, you're going to see scanners used normally to rack up the various items being sold. Well, in 1974, a pack of Wrigley's Juicy Fruit gum became the very first product to be scanned by a grocery store barcode. That was in Troy, Ohio. And in 1945, the United Nations Charter was officially signed by 50 allied nations in San Francisco. That paved the way for the establishment of the United Nations. And in 2015, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled in Obergefell versus Hodges that legalized same-sex marriage in all 50 states. Well, on that note, let us see what stories we have in the news, because there's always something going on. Well, Iranian drone strikes Singapore-flagged cargo ship leaving the Strait of Hormuz, according to U.S. officials. U.S. said Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps was behind a drone strike Thursday on a Singapore-flagged cargo ship leaving the Strait of Hormuz. That drone strike damaged the ship's bridge several miles off the coast of Oman, according to the UK Maritime Trade Operations Center. International Maritime Organization said it's temporarily pausing its vessel evacuation operation in the region after that attack. Iran and Oman are expected to hold talks on the future administration of the Strait of Hormuz, according to Iranian Foreign Minister Saeed Abbas Araghchi. U.S. Central Command shared photos and footage Thursday of an American fighter jet operating in the Middle East, saying U.S. forces remain present and vigilant throughout the region. And President Trump says Iran wants to make a deal as the U.S. negotiates from a position of pure strength. President Trump said Thursday evening the U.S. is negotiating with Iran from a position of pure strength. We knocked the hell out of them, and now we're negotiating from a position of that strength, he said at a dinner with American farmers in the White House Rose Garden. President Trump said Iran wants to make a deal with us very badly, also insisting Tehran not be allowed to obtain nuclear weapons. The president also said the Strait of Hormuz remains open. He additionally reiterated that Iran could become a new market for U.S. farmers, saying the administration would use Iranian money to buy wheat and soybeans and corn as Tehran struggles with food shortages. Well, part of the problem, of course, is especially the Republican Guard is made up of fanatics who believes whatever they want is the right thing. Well, red state government has banned 4th of July fireworks statewide over wildfire concerns ahead of America's 250th anniversary. That's the Utah governor, Spencer Cox, on Thursday issued a temporary statewide restriction on fireworks for the upcoming 4th of July holiday, citing historic and extraordinary wildfire conditions across the state. Cox, who is a Republican, signed an executive order declaring a state of emergency, temporarily suspending state law to allow the... Now, what has happened here? There we go. computers are great things until they act strange. Anyway, he temporarily suspended state law to allow the state forester to ban the discharge of fireworks within the municipal boundaries between July 2nd and July 5th. As America's 250th anniversary approaches, 94% of Utah is facing severe or extreme drought. The state's already seen 354 wildfires, scorched nearly 142,000 acres this season. 175% of the wildfires have been caused by humans. And while that mandate snuffs out some of the holiday excitement, it offers a potential compromise for residents wanting to celebrate. Local municipal leaders, working alongside their fire chiefs, are granted the authority to designate specific safe areas where fireworks will still be permitted. Well, folks are going to ignore that and do their own, and it's going to wind up causing problems. Well, there are those that say the Democratic Party needs new leadership. Old models are no longer working. Senator Elisa Slotkin, Democrat of Michigan, says she believes the Democratic Party is in need of new leadership, arguing that the party never completely recovered after its losses in the 2024 election. Doing an appearance on Sirius XM's Straight Shooter on Wednesday, Senator told host Stephen Smith, every day there's a debate within the party about the path forward. That's why I believe we need significant new leadership. The old model's no longer working. That includes the Democratic Party. Slotkin went on to explain that new leaders are needed in both the House and the Senate, adding her party needs to center its focus more on just a few key issues. And she, like many others, believe their race to the left has to stop. Team USA falls to Turkey in final seconds, still set for round of 32 match versus Bosnia and Herzegovina. U.S. men's national soccer team lost its final Group D match to Turkey 3-2 as Kain Ayan scored on the final shot of the game in a crushing blow to the home country. The only and more important caveat, the game never affected the U.S.'s chances of winning the FIFA World Cup in the first place. Team USA is trying to take momentum into round 32 next week. It would make history for the country as the first team to win 3 World Cup matches. Instead, it's a bit of a heartbreak in Los Angeles. Well, World Cup's something I've never really gotten into. Well, we'll see what comes out of the World Cup matches. House Democrats clash over what New York election results mean for the party. House Democrats offered sharply different takes Wednesday after a surge in socialism proved victorious in the Democratic Party when 3 far-left candidates swept the floor in key races in New York's primary elections. The new wave of socialist candidates who were backed by the Democratic Socialist of America beat out moderate Democrats on Tuesday night's race, and that's fueled mixed reactions from lawmakers over whether these new deals be at the center of the entire Democratic Party. Never thought I would see socialism dominating this country, but there you are. It's sort of dismissed as a fluke or an outlier, but whenever more moderate Democrats win, people say that's a blueprint for Democrats to continue winning, according to Representative Ayanna Pressley, Democrat of Massachusetts. Made that comment when asked about what the streak of progressive wins means for the Democratic Party. She went on to say, so people should take heed. Maybe she can raise enough money to get a wig. The Democrats quickly distanced themselves from the far-left movement, or at least the socialist identity. Representative Thomas Suzy, a Democrat of New York, said, I'm a capitalist, not a socialist. I believe in safety, not lawlessness, and I'm proud of America, and I'm not ashamed of America. Representative Gregory Meeks, Democrat of New York, struck a similar note. He said, so for me, I believe in capitalism, so I'm not a socialist. I don't know whether that's an issue or not. Well, we'll see what else comes of it. Florida tattoo shop refuses service to military and veterans for being war criminals. Florida tattoo shop is facing backlash after a social media post from the shop that said active duty military members and veterans are not welcome at the company, prompting online criticism. June 28th post from Revival Tattoo Collective in Largo, Florida said people in all in their feelings because I expressed my opinion of the military and law enforcement. In my opinion, is that the military is a bunch of war criminals and law enforcement kills babies and unarmed citizens in the street. If you don't like my opinion, that's fine, but you're not going to change it. Call me short, post records from 20 years ago, threaten health department use homophobic slurs. Only proves my point and shows the true character of our military. Thanks for showing your true colors. Went on to add once again for the slow ones, the military. Pretty simple. If you're ex-military currently serving, just don't come to the shop. You'll be turned away. Well, it's having served almost 20 years total in the military, I have to say that I'm offended by the attitude. Well, as America prepares to celebrate its 250th birthday, there's a lot of people who are reflecting about this nation's remarkable journey. The individual who made the comments that I'm looking at was born in Cuba under a socialist system that promised equality and prosperity, delivered scarcity, repression, and limited opportunity. This individual and their family left the island at 16, embarked on a difficult journey through Central America in search of something millions around the world still seek today, and that's freedom. Well, I've known a lot of people who lived in various socialist and communist rural countries, and the majority of them who will talk about it, I firmly believe that America is the place they're going to live the rest of their life. Well, New York Governor Kathy Hochul tries to get the Bills chant going at a new stadium and fails. Buffalo Bills, after years of playing home games at the old Highmark Stadium, officially cut the ribbon on their brand new facility this week. Several prominent figures spoke at the ceremony, including team owner Terry Pegula and Mary Wilson, the wife of former owner Ralph Wilson, and New York Governor Kathy Hochul. Now, she's not exactly the most charismatic or popular politician in the sports world. And she took that opportunity to try and get the crowd hyped up, even attempting to lead a cheer, which didn't go well. She, a very divisive individual. WNBA suspended Alyssa Thomas for recklessly hitting Caitlin Clark in the throat during a scramble. And WNBA reviewed the Caitlin Clark Alyssa Thomas incident that happened on Wednesday night, and apparently wasn't happy with what it found. Phoenix Mercury forward Alyssa Thomas received a flagrant foul 2 penalty and 1-game suspension after the league reviewed the contact between Clark during the Mercury's 111-109 win over the Indiana Fever at Cambridge Fieldhouse. WNBA announced Thursday Thomas was punished for recklessly making contact with her fist in the throat area of Clark. That play occurred with a 6-minute, 52-second remaining in the second quarter. Clark dove toward the basket and went to the floor as multiple players fought for the ball. During the scramble, Thomas seemed to drive her fist into Clark's neck and throat area. Foul was not called during the play, but WNBA said on Thursday Thomas's action was deemed a non-basketball act. League also noted that its office has the ability, after reviewing any game, to reclassify a flagrant foul or reclassify any foul or not called as a flagrant during a game. The league can also impose a fine or suspension. So Thomas is going to serve that suspension June 27th when the Mercury visit the Toronto Tempo. I've never seen such anger toward any player as Caitlin Clark seems to undergo. Trump administration pledges $150 million in aid, deploys Navy warships after deadly Venezuela earthquakes. After a catastrophic set of earthquakes that left at least 235 people dead in Venezuela, Trump administration has activated a government-wide humanitarian response, pledging $150 million in aid and deploying U.S. Navy warships to assist in life-saving rescue operations. Rapid mobilization Thursday came after back-to-back magnitude 7.2 and 7.5 earthquakes rocked northern Venezuela, about 120 miles west of Caracas Wednesday night. A rare earthquake, a doublet, injured more than 940 people and turned the state of La Guaira into a disaster zone, forcing the closure of the damaged Simon Bolivar International Airport, according to Venezuela's health ministry. The U.S. Department of State announced on Thursday it's mobilizing $150 million in aid, which includes $50 million in new bilateral awards for relief partners on the ground, such as Samaritan's Purse, Catholic Relief Services, and World Vision, along with a $100 million contribution to a United Nations humanitarian pool fund. Well, it's nice the government has all that money to throw around. There's a lot of things that need to be done here. Well, FIFA faces pressure to discipline 2026 World Cup co-host Mexico after an anti-gay chant returns versus Czechia. Anti-gay slurs been chanted by Mexico fans could lead to disciplining from FIFA for the squad of one of the host countries in the 2026 World Cup. At least 3 instances during Mexico's 3-0 victory over Czechia on the Wednesday night, where the anti-gay slur was chanted by fans. And this specific chant has caused stoppages in play during past matches and even led to fines from Mexico. But officials allowed play to continue despite it being heard throughout the crowd. Chants directed at the opposing goalkeeper, and no fifers tried to get the fans to stop. It made its return on Wednesday night. And now it's up to FIFA to try to potentially discipline Mexico again amid a solid start to its tournament. We'll see what comes of this. Records reveal the massive arsenal Ohio man reportedly built to attack the White House UFC event. An Ohio man accused of plotting a terrorist attack at the White House during the UFC fight had built up a stockpile of weapons and ammo and even more, according to authorities. Tyson Proper, 19, is one of 7 men accused of plotting an attack on the UFC Freedom 250 at the White House. That match took place on June 14th. Officials said the FBI first learned about the attack plot June 10th and worked with local authorities to make the arrest. Report released by Knox County Sheriff's Office in Ohio indicates that Proper spent $3,000 on armor and vest, a shotgun, extra ammo, and a lot of other supplies. On June 5th, according to the report, Proper purchased a 12-gauge semi-automatic shotgun that had an American flag painted over it. Well, his ammunition to go with it. He also bought an AR-15 5.56 caliber rifle June 13th. Officials allege Proper had stockpiled the 2 firearms, an American flag-painted 12-gauge semi-automatic shotgun with a red dot optic and a AR-15 rifle with a red dot sight and magnifier, along with 3 plate carriers loaded with 308 rated ballistic plates, a tactical bump helmet, a battle belt with loaded ammunition pouches, 13 loaded AR-15 magazines, more than 1,000 rounds of 5.56 ammunition. And that and a lot of other items were stored in a family member's home. He spent $3,000 of his graduation money to build that stockpile, according to the criminal complaint. His father told law enforcement Proper quit his job in order to meet up with people he met online. They conducted what they call missions and recons, according to the complaint. Propper's mother called authorities over the alleged firearm purchases and activity online. She told a 911 dispatcher, "We took all the guns and ammo out of his room and got it off our property. He just came inside and probably going to discover it's not in his room." Well, it's, you have to say that's a parent who cares. Well, Laura Ingraham in her show said the GOP's got to start offering solutions to young people's problems. The Democrats appear to be offering solutions. That doesn't mean they are. Well, a Muslim Mandami-backed socialist primary winner suggested America deserved 9/11 in an unearthed video. Another radical far-left candidate backed by socialist New York City Mayor Zohran Mandami is under fire after a resurfaced social media clip shows her appearing to suggest America deserved the September 11, 2001 terror attack. Eber Kallas is the Muslim daughter of illegal aliens who's now the Democratic nominee for the New York State Senate District 12. Like Mandani, Kallas is a socialist. Symbol of capitalism and racism and white supremacy and Islamophobia have all been used to colonize lands, to take resources from other people. And so this is a long trajectory, and we're just seeing the manifestations of that continuation with 9/11, she said in a 2017 episode of the Asian American Writers Association podcast titled Islamophobia Behind 9/11 with Eber Kallas. Then she downplayed the horrific attack. Well, until American voters take a firm line about socialism and all the other things that have come out of New York, we're going to continue to have these type of issues. Well, Prince Harry's UK plans could send a powerful message to King Charles and Prince William, according to experts. When Prince Harry and Meghan Markle land in the UK next month, they may stay at Princess Diana's ancestral home. And that trip would mark the first time in 4 years the Duke of Sussex, who lives in California, has returned to his home country with his wife and their 2 children. They expected to travel to Britain for celebrations marking the 1-year countdown to the Invictus Games Birmingham 2027, according to the BBC. Well, on that note, we're going to get into our topic for today. We've been talking about a number of historical, I guess you could call them anomalies. Yesterday we talked about the missing cornerstone of the White House. Well, one of what has been described as history's most sacred relics is what's called the Spear of Destiny. Supposedly used to stab Christ while he hung on the cross. And there are many who believe it holds mystical powers. And it's been pursued by everybody from Napoleon to Adolf Hitler. In fact, Hitler said to have annexed Austria just to get his hands on it. And supposedly, it's now rests in a Nazi submarine. A lot of theories abound that the spear may allow its holder to become invincible. And as I said, a lot of folks believe that its final resting place is in a sunken German U-boat off the coast of the United States. Now, quite frankly, to a lot of researchers, it doesn't matter if it has magical powers. What matters is if Adolf Hitler went to such lengths to get a hold of this thing, we need to know what it is. So we're going to examine what's referred to as the Spear of Destiny. It's got a number of other names. Now, the spear is mentioned only one time in the Bible. Book of John, chapter 19, verse 34. It said, "But one of the soldiers with a spear pierced his side, and forthwith came out blood and water." Only 19 words in the entire Bible. But they do form the heart of the story of the spear. And over the centuries, that story gave birth to mystical lore that grew more and more elaborate as time went on. Began when Pontius Pilate sent Jesus to his death. In order to confirm that Christ had actually died, a Roman soldier standing nearby, holding a spear, was ordered to stab him. And he did so. The spear pierced his side, and it said that blood and water spewed out of his body. Now, that soldier was not named in the Bible. Later claimed to have been a man known as Longinus. As a result of stabbing Christ, Longinus is said to have suffered for many, many years. According to one story, he was subjected to nightly mauling by a lion as his punishment. But because of the suffering Longinus experienced and his repentance for the act of stabbing Christ, some Christian faiths, including the Roman Catholic Church and the Eastern Orthodox Church, refer to him as Saint Longinus. And the weapon he yielded is referred to as the Spear of Longinus. That's another name for the Spear of Destiny. Other names have been the Holy Lance, the Lance of Longinus, the Spear of Christ. By any of its names, though, the true spear would be among the most revered and coveted of all religious artifacts. For centuries, many have believed that Longinus' spear controls the destiny of the world, be it good or be it evil. For that reason, conquerors and would-be world leaders were among those who coveted the spear. Now, nobody knows for sure where the spear is. St. Peter, one of Jesus' 12 apostles, helped lead Christ's followers after the crucifixion. And he eventually traveled to Rome, and in 64 AD, he was martyred by crucifixion, and then he was buried. 200 years later, St. Peter's Basilica, the centerpiece of the Vatican, was built over his gravesite. He's the man who became the first pope, don't you know? At the heart of the basilica, 60 feet below its altar, is the body of St. Peter. And located around the body on the piers that are holding up the dome are 4 chapels that have contained 4 of the most important relics of Christianity. The veil that wiped Christ's face when he was on the cross, a piece of the true cross, the head of St. Peter's brother, St. Andrew, who was returned to Greece in 1964 by Pope Paul VI. And so one of them is also said to hold the Spear of Destiny. That's the spear that was presented to Pope Innocent the Eighth as a bribe. So it depends on what spear you're talking about. Throughout history, there have been several relics said to be the Spear of Destiny. In fact, there are no fewer than 3 Spears of Destiny we know about today. 2 of them in prominent locations, one in the Vatican and one in Vienna, Austria. Well, then any search for the spear, that search would begin in the Vatican. Unfortunately, the Vatican spear isn't on display. According to one historian, it's only taken out once a year for a few moments at the end of the day on Good Friday. In fact, the Vatican spear is so treasured, it's located in one of the most prominent pieces of real estate in all of religion, St. Peter's Basilica. As I said, the burial place of the Apostle Peter, who became the very first pope. And that spear, along with a series of other relics, makes the framework for the tomb of St. Peter. Well, the spear is ceremonially removed once a year from its place of honor and almost immediately put back. And investigators who've asked to examine it many, many times over the centuries have been told there's no way the Vatican is going to let anybody test the authenticity of that spear. You have to take it on faith that that's the actual Spear of Destiny. Nevertheless, most historians believe that the Vatican spear has got a good pedigree. Could very well be the real thing. Now, a number of people disagree. According to Jason Spieler, a theologian who studied the spear, he said toward the end of the 1400s, the Vatican spear was given by a sultan to Pope Innocent VIII. It was given as a bribe, asking the Pope to keep the Sultan's brother as a political prisoner. Now, that's one of the stranger stories about the Spear of Destiny. The Pope had a Sultan locked in jail, hoping that the Sultan's little brother would give the Pope the most valuable thing he had in his possession, a relic he claimed was the real Spear of Destiny. In other words, he was asking for a bribe. Younger brother wasn't bribing the Pope to get his big brother out of jail. He wanted the Pope to keep his brother in jail so that the younger brother could continue to be the Sultan. And according to Spieler, there's no way the young Sultan would have traded away what was potentially the most powerful religious relic in Christendom just to keep his brother in jail. I mean, if he had the possession of the true spear and it made him invincible, he might be concerned about the older brother. I mean, if you had the true spear that gave you all these mystical powers, why would you trade it away? Which means it's far more likely that what the Sultan really gave the Pope was potentially a convincing replica of the spear. Well, whether or not it was the real spear, and regardless of whether or not it had magic powers, one thing became very clear over time. The spear clearly had a political function, and Pope Innocent VIII was not the only person to realize that. Now, over the centuries, the Spear of Destiny is said to pass through the hands of at least 45 leaders. Among those 45 are Constantine the Great, possessed the spear and supposedly became the foremost general of his time. He founded the Eastern Roman Empire. At one point, the Roman Empire was so big it was divided into two empires. Charlemagne supposedly used the spear to conquer Italy and unite most of Western Europe. Although the first successfully defended Hungarian raids into Saxony. Well, the whole story sounds a little bit crazy, I guess you could say. But think about it. Otto the First, founder of the Holy Roman Empire, said to have never lost a battle. And maybe his unbroken string of victories was a result of military skills and the size of his armies, but that didn't stop folks from thinking it might have been a Spear of Destiny that was the source of his triumphs. And more important, if a power-crazed megalomaniac thinks that an ancient religious relic can grant him absolute power, there's no doubt in my mind he's going to try to do everything he can to get his hands on it, no matter what it costs. And the same goes for protecting the spear. When Napoleon's armies were approaching Vienna early in the 1800s, city fathers ordered the spear moved to Nuremberg. They're going to move one of the city's most prized possessions, its holiest treasure, to another city, to keep him falling into the hands of a man already seen poised to conquer the world. And certainly many people thought Napoleon was actually going to do that. The fear was holding the spear might make Napoleon completely unstoppable. Which brings us down to Adolf Hitler, who clearly was willing to do anything he could in order to gain supreme power. Now, he was said to have first seen the spear in Vienna in a museum. And there is almost as many legends about Hitler's relationship with the spear and its promise to near infinite power as are surrounding the spear itself. Now, a lot of those legends come from a 1973 book by Trevor Ravenscroft called The Spear of Destiny, which claims that Hitler first saw the spear in Vienna, where it had been returned after the Napoleonic Wars. Now, Hitler was just a boy at the time he saw it. Was already dreaming about world conquest, according to Ravenscroft. So you have to ask yourself, what kind of kid dreams about conquering the world? And certainly Adolf Hitler was a unique personality, I guess you could say. According to the story told by Ravenscroft, on seeing the spear, the young Hitler was seized by a mystical vision that foretold his possession of the spear and its use to help him conquer the world. Also, according to Ravenscroft, Adolf Hitler's route to his rise to power and his actual launch in World War II were all undertaken to capture the spear. According to him, anything else was secondary to Hitler getting the spear of destiny in his possession. Now, there's no question that the story of the spear and its history have gotten a little, shall we say, off the beam, so to speak. No credible historians take Ravenscroft and his theories seriously, but there are plenty of Ravenscroft enthusiasts all over the internet. All you got to do is go look up the Spear of Destiny on the internet and see what some of the stories are. And some of these secondhand Ravenscroft stories are even stranger than the original. But there is one thing that Ravenscroft's book did give us. Screenwriter Raiders of the Lost Ark used it as part of the movie's plot. Now, another organization that figures rather prominently in the story of the Spear of Destiny is the Thule Society. It was built on beliefs that stretch back to early German myths. Men with the powers of gods, men who were better than all other men, a super race, if you will. And those who joined the Thule Society had to sign a blood oath asserting the truth of such lines as the signer hereby swears to the best of his knowledge and belief that no Jewish or colored blood flows in either his or his wife's veins, and among their ancestors, no members of the colored races. It's interesting to see just how extensive racism played a part in early human race. In fact, it was still alive and well in the 80s and 90s. When I had my run-in with a judge who said blacks don't have the right to representation, and I disagreed with him. This was the most powerful judge in the state of Georgia, and he said, "You're a traitor to your race, and you'll be punished for that." And he set out to do that. Well, the emblem of the Thule Society actually inspired the Nazis to use a swastika as their symbol. Hitler dedicated Mein Kampf to a Thule member. And it was this occult group that actually selected the man we know as Adolf Hitler to be their leader. And it said that with the Spear of Destiny in their possession, they believed they would become invincible and conquer the world. Even the twin lightnings, the bolt insignia of the SS, is based on an ancient German rune. Well, all that aside, there's one major question and has never been answered. What happened to the actual Spear of Destiny? In October 1938, the lance that Hitler believed to be the Spear of Destiny was in a Viennese museum. With Austria firmly under Nazi control, Hitler supposedly ordered the SS to seize the relic and take it by train to Nuremberg. And there he stored it in the church for 6 years. The amount of time it took his engineers to secretly build a specially constructed vault capable of standing up to Allied bombing, protecting the spear and the power Hitler may have believed it possessed. Well, this is what many people believe is the heart of the story. Real or fake, whether it had mystical powers or not, if this object is being chased by the most evil man of all time, we really need to know more about it. But the more folks have searched, the more folks have realized that there's one person who might have been even more obsessed with the spear than Hitler himself. And that was Hitler's primary henchman, Heinrich Himmler. Trained as an agronomist, Hitler was also deeply committed about the study of the occult and the attempt to put occult forces to work for the darkest goals of the Third Reich, including the power of the Spear of Destiny. Now, if you remember, Himmler was actually the head of the SS, Hitler's most elite military group. Also the man behind the horrors of the extermination camps, where more than 11 million Jews and other minority groups were gassed and cremated and worked to death in the single most horrible and chillingly efficient mass murder campaign this world's ever seen. But the spirit was far from the only focus of handling Himmler's obsession. Like many who considered themselves intellectuals, Himmler developed and promoted any number of theories explaining the superiority of the Aryan people. According to Himmler, the Aryans were meant to rule the world and impose their superiority on it. He believed the Germans were superior to all other people, put that belief to the test by tracking down the burial places of great heroes from the Aryan past. These graveyards were designated breeding cemeteries because they thought babies who were conceived in graveyards would inherit the attributes of the heroes buried there. So they had a program to make babies in the cemeteries. A lot of young men were dying to get in there, I guess. More important, Himmler was a ardent member of the Thule Society, a group dedicated to both mysticism and the superiority of the Aryan people. He took his fascination with the occult so far he had a precise replica of the spear made for his private office. He kept it near a vial of his own blood. I mean, you gotta wonder about somebody who uses a vial of their own blood as a paperweight. So what happened to Himmler? Well, according to history, he killed himself in prison after the war, rather than standing up to face his accusers and accepting punishment for his crimes. But before he was captured, before the Third Reich fell to the Allies, he may have put into place a mystical plan involving the Spear of Destiny. It also involved German submarines and what many believe is Base 211 in Antarctica. Brings us back to the only question that really matters, I guess. Where's the Spear of Destiny today? According to historian and Nazi researcher Dieter Meyer, at the end of World War II, the Germans were mounting submarine expeditions to Antarctica, shipping important objects and important people there to preserve the Fourth German right to strike back at any given moment. Well, I've heard that described as just a fantasy, but unfortunately, for the human race, it's actually true. Without question, at the end of World War II, the Nazis started to lay the groundwork for their own comeback. Concrete evidence Hitler sent U-boats to various locations around the world, including Antarctica. Their job was to set up bases across the ice, and rumors of these secret bases on the frozen continent may be used as storehouses for secret research materials. Stolen artwork, wealth, and treasure began circulating even before the war was over with. Hitler was trying to give the Fourth Reich the ability to succeed where the Third Reich had failed. But with the war drawing toward its inevitable close in 1945, other rumors began to circulate. German U-boats had been secretly sneaking to the coast of the U.S., putting spies and saboteurs ashore in Maine and Long Island and North Carolina, clearly working their way down the East Coast. So the question becomes, what were they after? Among other things, the secrets of the Manhattan Project. The Nazis were going after the plans for the atomic bomb. There's a lot of evidence they'd already built and used their own against the Russians. Spies dropped off on Long Island managed to remain hidden in New York for almost a month before they were finally captured. But according to Meyer, there was another agenda at work aboard the U-boats. He firmly believes it's possible that with the Reich collapsing around them, Germans, including Heinrich Himmler, may have launched a scheme to leave behind a fake Spear of Destiny while smuggling what they believe to be the true spear out of Germany. And their goal is to hide it in a secret Antarctic location where it and its powers can be used to launch a rebirth of Nazism, the so-called Fourth Reich. When the time was right, the journey down the East Coast is only part of the voyage. U-boat's actual goal was actually further south. A lot further south, I guess you could say. What's most disturbing about Murrell's assertion isn't just the ongoing existence of neo-Nazism and modern-day followers of Hitler. It's their belief that the spirit's real power could be used today. Belief is further clarified by biblical scholar Dr. Erhard Zoner, who said that they wanted to present Hitler as the leader of the world, the new God, so to speak. According to Zoner, Nazi occultists supposedly believed getting the spear in the hands of Hitler wouldn't just symbolize his leadership and make him an unstoppable force in war. With the spear of destiny, it was believed that he could become more than the Führer. He'd become God himself. Now, it's not the belief that the spear has magical powers that's the real danger. But it's a small group of modern neo-Nazis who firmly believe in those powers and will fight for those powers. It doesn't matter if they're wrong or right. From 9/11 to recent shootings in the U.S., there's nothing more dangerous than a true believer on his own crazy mission. He thinks he's anointed by God to carry out his mission. How do you stop somebody who so firmly believes in the righteousness of his cause that he pulls out all the stops? If there's any accuracy to Mayer's speculation to mean that the spear captured by the Allies was most likely the replica that Himmler had stored in his office, or even another replica. Historian Peter Levenda pointed out that the Nazis created a virtual industry out of counterfeiting works of art and rare artifacts, including religious artifacts. After the war, many of these artworks that were returned to their owners turned out to be counterfeits. It could very well be that the spear captured by the Allies, which now sits in a museum known as the Vienna Hofburg, is among the fakes. Only way to find out for sure is to test the spear in Vienna. But when that was tried, that proved to be impossible. They were able to arrange for an exact replica of the Vienna spear to be examined by archaeometeorologists, a scientific expert on ancient metals. But after x-raying its metal pieces, the expert could only determine the material is very old. To get more precise and accurate figures for the age of the spear would require carbon dating, which would require removing as much as a half centimeter material from the spear. And as you might guess, the museum wouldn't allow it. So with no means of scientifically dating the age of the spear that's in the Vienna Hofburg, it's obviously no way to knowing if it even could be the true spear of destiny. Most people believe the one in the Hofburg is actually a replica. And whether it's the one Himmler commissioned or not, there's no way to really know. Yet that doesn't mean that there aren't some very strange stories surrounding this spear, some of them dating to its recapture by the Allies. While the legend says that he who holds the spear of destiny is invincible, there's also another side to that coin. He who loses the spear loses his life. And those who believe that look to Hitler to prove their point. Because 2 hours after U.S. General George Patton and his men captured the spear, Hitler is said to have committed suicide in his underground bunker. Could have been the spear. Could have been the fact that thousands of Allied troops were at his doorstep screaming for his mustache. To this day, we don't know whether or not the American troops that took possession of the spear believed in the legends surrounding it, or, for most of them, are even aware of the legends. But we do know that the Allied commander who was ultimately in charge of the occupation forces in that part of Germany certainly knew the spear and had in fact given it some thought of his own. Now, in addition to being a brilliant and controversial battlefield commander, George S. Patton was a strong believer in reincarnation. In his poem, Through a Glass Darkly, he recounted his numerous former lives. And ironically, one of those lives may have been lived as Longinus himself. He wrote, "Maybe I stabbed our Savior," referring to Longinus' infamous deed. Well, that sounds odd, to say the least. As part of the occupation, Patton oversaw the return of stolen artworks and relics to their rightful owners. In the case of the Spear of Destiny, the rightful owner was Austria, from whom the spear was taken by Hitler years before. Patton had ordered the spear to be returned to Vienna, where it resides in a museum to this day. Well, not long after that spirit was released from Patton's control, he was killed as a result of a freak slow-speed car accident. He'd had the spear. As soon as he relinquished it, he died. So we rule out the Vatican spear and the one of Vienna. That leaves one final theory to investigate. What about the supposed Antarctic base, what's known as Base 211? Well, though many people think it's just a myth or a legend, it's more real than realized, though its purpose remains unknown. A New York Times article from July 1945 mentions the discovery of a secret Nazi Antarctic haven. Now, the source said 16 crew members landed on Antarctic shore and deposited numerous boxes that apparently held documents and relics from the Third Reich. U.S. military operation called Operation High Jump followed that shortly. The operation had numerous objectives, ranging from testing equipment in frigid conditions to the establishment of a research facility. And it was also alleged that Operation High Jump had another purpose: to seek out and demolish a Nazi base. If you go to Amazon Kindle, look up Ken Hudnall. We've got a book on Operation High Jump. A lot of stuff we found was strange, to say the least. But this raises the question. Back in 1945, you were looking for a place to hide the most precious and potentially powerful relic in your possession. Where would you hide it? No question, Antarctica wouldn't be a bad choice, especially back then when it was largely unexplored, hard to get to and difficult to survive in. A place like that might be the last place anybody'd look for something like the Spear of Longinus. And that may be exactly what the Nazis were hoping for. A place almost impossibly remote and inhospitable. They could hide the Spear of Destiny, its powers, while they put into motion their own darkest, most dangerous plan yet. But there's one twist. The U-boat that was supposedly bound for Antarctica carrying the Spear never reached its destination. It was sunk off the coast of Florida. It's still there today. Maybe that's where the true Spear of Destiny is located. Well, turns out there's a number of stories about the Spear of Destiny that have rarely seen the light of day. Well, the individual that where I obtained most of this information said he was contacted by a man, had some delicate information to share with him. And it was about a plot that would have severe repercussions if it was carried out. Now, the individual who brought the information was a personal driver and bodyguard for a wealthy and powerful man. His boss was a friend and had the ear of a U.S. president. And according to the informant, his wealthy boss knew the location of the true Spear of Destiny. In the course of his service to his boss, he encountered a lot of other people, including a high-ranking government official who one night snuck up a conversation over drinks. And according to what the informant had to say, the federal official worked the conversation around to the Spear of Destiny and asked the biggest and most frightening bar story question that the informant had ever heard. What would you say if I told you that your boss is the man who stole the Spear of Destiny from Adolf Hitler? Well, of course, the informant was stunned by such a statement. According to the official, the informant's boss was a member of a secret group calling themselves the Sons of the Fallen, the Disciples of Lucifer. They believe that the God of the Bible is evil, and they believe that Lucifer is good. Well, you got to wonder about folks like that. But this small, powerful group believes that the God that we all know is the bad guy in the story. And according to this discussion, the Sons of the Fallen believe that when the temple is rebuilt in Jerusalem, they'll send their handpicked man into the temple, the holiest of holies, with the Spear of Destiny. And in that temple, he'll shed his own blood with the spear and proclaim himself the Messiah. They plan on ruling the world. They believe it's enough to not only be willing to kill for it, they believe it enough to die for it. And even now, according to the story, the sons that have fallen are at work in Jerusalem, attempting to bring the temple into being so they can put their plan into motion. But there's one detail that was addressed. Now, the informant didn't believe the story. He didn't think Lucifer is the good guy. He agrees that whether or not it's true, that part doesn't matter. What matters is the idea that these people still exist today and they believe the story. That made the most terrifying part of all for the spear. Now, whether the spear of destiny gives an army unstoppable power is almost irrelevant. If it makes an army believe it's unstoppable, that's the power. The sad thing is in the year 2026, there are groups that believe these ancient stories. And there are groups that are willing to risk everything to carry out what they believe. So we may see a rebirth of the temple. We may see somebody proclaim himself the Messiah. And while that will give him millions and millions of followers around the world, that doesn't mean what he says is true. Well, you have to think about the fact that sometimes people you think are completely sane turn out to be crazy as loons. And those people who believe the spirit of destiny makes them all powerful. Maybe among the strangest. Because let's face it, folks, I've known some of the wealthiest people on this planet. And a few of them, in my humble opinion, were a brick or two shy of a full sanity. But because they have the resources and because they have the ear of the right people, some of the strangest ideas you'll want to hear continue to gather followers. On that note, we come to the end of today's show and the end of the week. We'll be back on Monday with a new topic. Until then, this is Ken Hudnall for the Ken Hudnall Show, saying have a truly great weekend.